welcome to Cricut Tips. This is a fun class where we're going to do a craft and hopefully learn a few things on the Cricut. If you don't have a Cricut, no worries. I am going to provide you with a project pack each week so that you don't have to worry about cutting something on the Cricut. If you have a Cricut, hopefully you're going to learn a thing or two. And if you're interested in a Cricut and don't have one, the library does have one that's available for patron use. We just ask that you make an appointment. And if you've never used one before, make sure that you let them know when you make the appointment so we can have some staff available for you. So today our fun project is we're going to be taking these really cool wood cutouts and we're going to turn them into neat little holiday decor or seasonal decor. I got my fun little chalkboard turkey back here. And so with the Cricut today we are going to be working with text a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple fun things on how to do that. And I will let you know that a project pack will be available in the vestibule Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. You can pick that up. Your project pack will include a fun little wood cutout like this that if you want to end up looking like something like this when you're done, you will need to paint it. But I will include the wood cutout, some colored vinyl that is already cut in either a thankful or a welcome, some clear contact paper, and I'll explain why you need that. And you will be ready to put your own fun little holiday decor together. I have some other tips for you. I'm going to save those till the end because if you're like me, when you see a craft video, you're like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do the craft. Let's do the craft. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump on the computer. We're going to get started. I'm going to show you how to cut the text, a little bit on Cricut stuff, and then we're going to assemble our project. So let's get started. So here we are in our design space. If you use the library's Cricut, you will actually be able to log in here and I will save each of the projects that we do and you'll be able to find them right down here. So if you want to make another one or you needed to look at it a second time, it will be right here. If you're doing this at home, you will simply click on the new project and then you will see your virtual Cricut map. So we're going to do a text project today. So we're going to click on text. And we're simply going to type in our welcome. And then we're going to go up to the top where you see font. And we're going to select the font that we want. And there's tons to choose from. Some cost money, some are free. I'm pretty sure I already know which one we use. We did use the Sweet Pea. And there's another tip for you is that anytime you use a font and you really like it, make a note about it that I use this font in this project, stick a little note card because there are literally hundreds of fonts. And also anything that is in your computer or device that you have downloaded the Cricut Design Space to will use all of the fonts stored in that device, which also means that if you go onto those free font sites and download them to your computer or whatever device you're using, you can then use them in your Cricut. So for this particular project, I used the Sweet Pea font, so I'm just going to click on that, and there we have our little Sweet Pea font. So the next thing that I'm going to do is, because this is cursive writing, I want the letters connected. There are two ways that you can do this. One way is to go up here where there's letter spacing and actually click on this and it will begin to scoot the letters together. But what happened with this particular font is that for me, I felt that the letters were going to be unequally, for lack of better term, smushed together. So I'm going to come over here to the Ungroup button and I'm going to take them apart. And now, rather than this being all one thing, the letters are now individual, which means I can make them bigger, I can make them smaller, I can put an angle to them. And that way I can kind of just squish them together or connect them the way that I want to so that it appears more like a cursive writing, like it's all one fluid piece. And then once I do that, I'm going to highlight everything and I'm going to regroup it. So they were initially individual letters, now they are all back together, but they are connected. Now the next thing I want to do is, even though they are connected, they're still going to be treated as individual letters when you send them to the cut mat. And if you want it all in one fluid piece, the first thing you'll want to do is make sure that they're all really well connected. I'm a little concerned about that E and C, so I'm actually going to ungroup these, and I'm just going to scoot them just a tad bit closer together, just because I want to make sure that when we go to the cut mat that we have a nice connected smooth piece. There we go. So again, I'm going to highlight this and regroup them. And now the next thing I'm going to do, again, because as I said, these will still kind of cut as individual pieces, I'm going to weld them. Okay, and by welding them, that means that they are all now connected in one fluid cut. When your machine or your blade goes to cut these letters, that it will be a continuous cut in between this E, this L, and this C. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is, I measured the pumpkin and the turkey, and we want a font or a cut that's going to be about 8.5. So I'm just going to drag that until I see that my width is at about 8.5, and there you have it. Now that one's ready to cut, except maybe this little E right here. I can go back and fix him. So that's all there is to doing the welcome. Now I'm going to show you a fun thing that you can do with the thankful, what I did with it. I'm going to type in my thankful, and again it's just going to remember the last font that I used, and we're okay with that. So we're going to actually try and move this over here. So I'm going to scoot this welcome over here. We have this thankful. There is a really fun thing up here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and make this a little bigger right now, that is a curve. And by clicking on this, it gives you this lovely little bar, and you can actually bend your text. And that's what I did to kind of shape that thankful to go around the feathers of my turkey. Now I will still go ahead and ungroup these as well, so I can feature that lovely little sort of connectedness that the cursive has to offer. And you could just go ahead and ungroup them and tilt these however you wanted to, but I kind of like the machine doing a little bit of the work for me. And you'll want to make sure that you put these letters, move the letters around before you actually weld it, because once it's welded it won't bend. So now that we have them all together, it looks pretty good. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select, I'm going to regroup them, and then I'm going to weld them. The other thing that you should know, oops, I'm going to show you how to fix that in a minute. The other thing that you should know is once you weld something, it will stay that way unless you undo it. Okay, you can always backtrack when you weld something, but if you move on and do other things, let's say once I welded this, I resized it and did a couple more changes, the only way to unweld that is to go back and undo everything that I've done. So sometimes it just doesn't like when we have these open letters, for whatever reason the weld tends to fill it in, and I'm not really sure why it does that. It's just one of those strange things. Okay, so when it continues to give you this problem, here's something that you can do. So again, I'm going to undo it. I am going to detach them, and I'm now going to ungroup them. I'm going to pull this A out of here. I'm going to set it right down there for a minute. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to weld this so that it will all stay together. So far so good. I'm going to bring this A back up in here. I'm going to group them together, and we're going to weld them. And there you go. Why it does that, I have no idea. Sometimes you just gotta mess with the machine. So now we're ready to go ahead and move over to the cutting portion of it. So you're just going to head up here to where it says make it. You will Make sure that you like where everything is on your mat. We will set our machine to vinyl and we will get ready to put our material onto the cut mat. So I'm going to leave the computer and head over to the cut mat and show you how to put things on and load the machine and cut your materials. You're going to take the piece of vinyl that you're working with and put it firmly on the mat, making sure that it's flat on all corners and in the middle so that there's no air bubbles or spaces where the blade can catch it and pull it up or away from the mat and tear your vinyl while it's cutting. Next, we're going to take our mat with the vinyl attached to it and load it into the Cricut by pressing the load button and making sure that the mat is loaded squarely. We'll then turn the dial to the material that we want, in this case vinyl, and go to the PC screen and hit continue so that it will indicate that we are ready to hit the cut button or go. So you will go back to the machine where the go button is ready and click it and it will begin cutting. Once the machine is done cutting, you simply hit the load unload button again to remove the mat and begin peeling your vinyl off of the mat. There's actually a little trick to removing your transfer. The first thing you're going to do is take the outer edges of your vinyl, the excess material that we don't use. So you're going to carefully just peel it away from your image, making sure not to pull it too hard or too quickly and tear the letters. Once you have successfully removed the excess vinyl, you can get your Cricut tool or a toothpick or a dental pick and begin taking the centers of the letters out so that your letters are as they should look. Once you have removed all of the centers from your letters or the excess pieces, you're ready to start using your transfer paper or your clear contact paper. Simply put it over your image, lay it as flat as possible and trying not to get any air bubbles, and then use your Cricut scraper to press on to the image itself so that the image ultimately will stick to the contact paper and you'll be able to remove it fairly easily from the backing that it's on. Once you have pressed several times across the front of the image, you're going to want to remove the backing from the Cricut mat itself and turn it over and do the same thing on the back. Just rubbing that image to get it to stick onto your transfer paper or your contact paper. Again, we want it to be able to adhere to the contact paper and away from the backing so we can transfer that image onto our wooden work surface. So again, once you finish the front, you will peel it carefully off of the mat and you will begin rubbing the back side of it as well to get that image to transfer onto your contact paper. A credit card can also be used in place of the Cricut tool. Our next step now is to remove the backing so that our image is stuck to our transfer or our contact paper. Again, using the same method slowly and carefully so as not to rip your letters, just start to remove the backing from your image. Your image will now be on your contact paper and you'll be ready to then turn it over and place it where you want to on your work surface, in this case our pumpkin or our turkey. Remember, where you place it is going to be where it permanently stays, so make sure you're happy with it because it is very difficult to pick up and remove once you have it stuck down. So once you have it in place where you want it, you're going to take your flat tool again, and if you don't have one of these, a pan scraper also works very well, and we're going to repeat that same method of just rubbing over top of the image until that image begins to stick to the wood instead of our transfer paper. One of the tips I will tell you at the end of this is using cheap contact paper as opposed to expensive transfer paper. One of the reasons for that is that oftentimes that the vinyl will stick very easily to the cheap contact paper, which makes it easy to remove from the contact paper and onto the image. The other thing that the cheap contact paper does is that it doesn't stick very well to your work surface, especially when you have painted something. You don't want the transfer paper to pull your paint up. Again, this is the same process we've used before. If the letters seem to stick to the contact paper, go ahead and rub them a little more, but make sure that you're just doing it very slowly and carefully so that you don't tear any of your letters. Once your image has transferred, it's ready to be sprayed with a sealant if you're going to use it outdoors, and then be decorated with your own personal touch. So when you're all done, you should have a fun little pumpkin like this, or a cool little turkey. I did that in chalkboard paint. Did you know that chalkboard paint now comes in a spray paint form? How much fun is that? Remember, if you're going to put your decoration outside, you'll want to put another sealant on it on both sides to make sure that it's waterproof, holds up in our lovely Northeast Ohio weather. If you're going to paint your pumpkin like I did, make sure that you give it at least 12 to 24 hours to dry. Otherwise, when you do the transfer, it may pull your paint up. And speaking of transfer, when you use transfer paper, I like to use this cheap contact paper. Actually get it at the Dollar Tree for $1. And again, it's adhesive enough to pull your vinyl off of the backing, but not so adhesive that it tears up your work surface. So that's really important and economical. Clear contact paper from the dollar store rather than expensive Cricut brand transfer tape. And speaking of which, you can always buy Cricut vinyl, and there's some other brands to do any kind of designs that you want to do in your vinyl, and it goes on a lot of different materials, just not wood. You know, you can do glass and fun things like that. If you are doing something like a wood cutout and it's going to be inside, you can actually use other materials such as cardstock. I've used wallpaper. There's all kinds of different fun contact paper. Walmart has some really fancy contact paper that you can buy quite a bit of relatively cheap. The dollar store has some that is really cute and relatively cheap. So the possibilities are only limited by your own creativity. So those are just a couple quick tips to kind of be economical and get creative. I hope you enjoyed this program today. If you did, make sure that you like it and share it so that your friends can become our friends. And if you finish the project, email it to us, reference@kingsvillelibrary.org, so that we can share it. We want to see it. Hope you had fun today. Tune in next time, and I will see you real soon.